Good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this 2020 edition of EduFin Talks, an initiative of the BBVA Center for Financial Education and Capability to discuss current topics regarding financial education. In this occasion, we will discuss the implications of the COVID-19 for financial education. Before we begin, I would like to give some housekeeping announcements. First of all, the event will be conducted in English. For simultaneous translation, you can find the English link, the Spanish link, in the chat box. Second, please note that this event will be recorded. The audiovisual recording of the event can be disseminated in BBVA's corporate internal and external channels, which include internet and BBVA social media. This recording can be as well disseminated in third-party media channels. To avoid noise and enhance the quality of the event, your audio and video connection will be automatically switched off. If you have any trouble connecting, please disconnect and try again. No connection by phone is available. And at this point, I would like to apologize for some inconvenience you may have experienced in the connection of the event this afternoon. Regarding questions, a question can be posed throughout the event by using the chat box located in the lower right corner of your screen. We strongly recommend you to address your questions to Q&A user or Q&A usuario in the Spanish version. Please use the drop-down window where you can choose the recipient of your questions to locate this Q&A user and Q&A usuario. If you want to address the question to a particular speaker, please do not use this drop-down menu, but indicate so at the beginning of the question. We will try to answer all the questions during the event. However, if they are not answered during the event, will be answered afterwards. We are conducting a survey on the state of financial education after COVID. A link to this survey will be shared in the chat box. Please take a moment to answer. We would love to hear from you. Then, during the event, you will see a banner in the lower part of your screens with a hashtag, so you can refer to the event in Twitter, and to the center website, where you can log in and subscribe to our newsletter if you are interested. I would like to also take a minute to briefly review the agenda for the day. We will begin with the welcome remarks by José Manuel González Páramo, External Advisor to BBVA and Chairman of the Advisory Council of the Center for Financial Education and Capability. Then, Leora Klapper, Lead Economist of the Development Research Group at the World Bank, will moderate the roundtable discussion about the challenges and opportunities for financial education in the post-COVID era. After the discussion, we will conduct a Q&A session. As you know, you can pose your questions throughout the event via the chat box. Finally, we will close the event with some concluding remarks. At this point, I would like to apologize for the absence of Mr. Antoni Vallabriga due to a personal inconvenience, cannot join us today. And with no more delay, I will give the floor now to José Manuel González Páramo to begin this 2020 edition of the EduFin Talks. Adelante, José Manuel.
Thank you, Lidia. Gracias. And let me say good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are. And welcome to our first virtual EduFin Talks. I would like to thank you for your attendance and wish you and your families my personal best for your health and safety in these difficult times. And also, let me also thank the exceptional group of speakers that have generously agreed to join us today. Well, as many of you know, the Center for Financial Education hosts every year its annual event, the EduFin Summit, which brings together 200 or around 200 experts from around the globe to discuss current trends on financial education. Well, this year, for well-known reasons, it has not been possible. But I think the pandemics has raised new challenges and opportunities in the field of financial education, and we don't want, or we didn't want to miss this opportunity uh, to share this virtual space to debate about those challenges and the role that financial education could play in the recovery. The COVID-19 outbreak has created, or is in the way of creating, the new social and economic paradigm that has driven us to reshape our priorities and transform our lives, at least for the moment. We will see the scars of this. But really, there are now new ways to produce, new ways to consume, new work methodologies, and even new relationships, new relationship models. And the challenges we are facing as a global community were inconceivable just a few months ago. Among them, the worrying increase in poverty that we see in many areas in the world, the vulnerability that we have seen or experienced, and with no doubt, the devastating consequences of inequality, not just inequality of incomes, but inequality in digital skills, inequality in access to finance that have exposed the fragility of many households the world over. The pandemic has also proven, with many examples, the value of strong financial knowledge and capabilities. And this is a proof that financial education programs must continue, and financial literacy should continue playing an important role in building resilience and well-being of our populations. Financial education cannot erase in one go the deep-seated economic inequalities, but it could help equip people with the required knowledge to better deal with economic shocks and successfully plan for the future. As we look beyond the pandemic, meaning when the health problem is over, but we are still recovering, I think there are a number of issues that should be addressed. Let me highlight three of them. First issue is the fact that financial education should primarily aim to vulnerable households. Of course, financial education is for all. The vulnerable households should be given priority. Those who are most vulnerable have been hit the hardest by the pandemic. The lack of financial literacy has hindered their capacity to cope with the crisis, and now many people face unprecedented financial stress. Financial education can be a life changer for those groups, impacting everything from supporting a family to getting a college education or starting a business. So, first issue is financial education in connection with vulnerable groups. Second, digital literacy. Digital literacy should become an opportunity, not an obstacle. And we have seen many obstacles throughout this pandemic. People having to line in queues to get transfers or incomes instead of getting them via accounts in the digital space. So there is urgency to ensure this transformation reaches and benefits everyone, everywhere. Digitization is emerging as a pivotal measure that promotes economic transactions and is at the same time protecting people's health. Um, Digitization, of course, brings all the challenges. First of these challenges, of course, is access to digital, access to internet, access to devices. Second, the lack of financial digital knowledge and experience, that's another obstacle. And thirdly, one has to mention a basic level of literacy or numeracy that may collide with the increase in digital payments and services that must be understood by those using them. So development of such products and services must be accompanied by adequate financial digital financial education and training. And this was an issue that we debated at length in the Mexico meeting and in Buenos Aires, you may remember. The third issue is inclusive recovery. Inclusive recovery must lead to inclusive growth. We believe that financial education is a key gear to shift towards more inclusive and sustainable growth. Financial education policies can, on the one hand, support the achievement of broader economic and social outcomes by strengthening consumer resilience to major financial shocks and economic stability, but also can help bridge remaining socioeconomic gaps and inequalities across and within countries, thus leading to more inclusive societies. So these three very important topics, I think, are worth some discussion. Now, what is it the role of our center in this context? Well, the center, and this is our main endeavor, at least the shared endeavor of most of us, should continue to focus on creating awareness on financial education as a key element to improving people's financial health and resilience. Despite the extraordinary uncertainty that we are still in and the unprecedented challenges we are facing, we believe that now more than ever, the purpose of the center is key. After almost 5 years of activity, in February next year, we will be 5. And this, I think, calls for a celebration. And we mentioned this in our last virtual meeting, we are thinking of formalizing this fifth anniversary with something important, a position paper on financial education that in principle we could see light in spring 21. The aim of the position paper is to state the role of financial education in the post-COVID area, aiming in addition to or at inspiring discussion topics, motivating research, being a reference for experts, and being a basis for the interaction with policymakers. This position paper has also the greater objective of representing the consensus of a large number of actors, and therefore it will create through a comprehensive and iterative process with the objective to engage a wide range of stakeholders. Today's event will serve as one stage in this process, and Lydia has mentioned another stage or another element, which is the survey that you will receive soon and that you're invited to fill in order to enrich the perspectives reflected in the paper. We will bring a draft paper to a broader discussion, perhaps within the next EduFin summit in the first half of 21, with the aim at the moment to publish it in May 2021. We all hope that this event helps to reconnect and to reimagine the new possibilities and ideas that lay ahead of us. Now, I would like to give the floor to Leora Clapper. You know Leora. Leora Clapper, lead economist at Development Research Group of the World Bank, who will moderate the roundtable. Thank you very much. And Leora, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for those wonderful comments. So welcome to our session in the BBVA 2020 EduFin panel, A New Era for Financial Education. So I'm joined by an esteemed panel, which I'll briefly introduce. We have Mayada El-Zagbi, the Managing Director of the Center for Financial Inclusion at Axion. Next, Andrea Lisenfeld, Deputy Head of the Retail Financial Services Unit at the European Commission, and Pablo Adrian Hardy, Head of Economy and Business at the Ibero-American General Secretariat. So let's begin. In March 2020, as COVID-19 lockdowns began around the world, markets became jittery, workers were furloughed, and hits to websites offering financial advice nearly tripled. And the amount of time readers spent on these websites offering financial education surged compared to the same period 1 year earlier. In these troubled times, is an opportunity to provide financial education to consumers who are very worried about their finances, And giving people the information and tools to build financial resilience in the recovery needs to be part of the strategy going forward. So our panel today will discuss financial tools used to address the challenges during COVID-19 and initiatives to provide financial education and build financial capability. For example, COVID-19 and social distancing means fewer face-to-face interactions and therefore fewer cash payments. Digital payments technology has helped fill that void. For example, more people are reportedly paying in stores using their phones, shopping online using cards, and using their accounts to directly receive wages and other payments. And we're seeing this across both high-income countries and developing countries alike. But Mayada, let's start with the question, has the technology helped all of us in the same way? What has been the impact of the pandemic on these digital divides, such as between rich and poor adults, men and women, educated and less educated, informal and less semi-formal businesses?
Uh, yes, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with everyone. This is my first year participating, so it's a real pleasure. Thank you to BBVA and for the center for inviting me. So yes, you can imagine that those who already had access to technology, those people who had phones, people who have access to data or the internet, people who have access to digital accounts, you can imagine that those individuals have been able to pivot and continue working like they did before the pandemic. And you can imagine those who did not have access to any of these things. And I would, posit just, generally, a lot of women fall behind in terms of access to phones, in terms of access to the internet, access to data, data plans, and so on. And then you can imagine also, rural communities where the connectivity is not necessarily there, the infrastructure is not there, and again, they may not have access to these phones and so on. So you can see that the shift to the need to use digital payments to avoid contracting the coronavirus has probably impacted those who don't have access to technology much more so. Now, governments have tried to alleviate some of this pain by putting out cash transfers, by helping businesses that have been shut down, by helping those most impacted. In most cases, a lot of these transfers have actually also used digital channels. So I can refer to the latest microscope report, which only looks at a subset of countries, not all of the countries that have started to use started to use cash transfers as one solution to the pandemic. But around 60% of the countries covered in the microscope, so they cover around 55 countries, around 60% of them have switched to digital transfers. So again, highly likely that the individuals that don't have access to, e-wallets, who don't have access to phones, are the ones that are not likely to benefit from those transfers. For us, the real issue is what have governments been doing? What have providers been doing during the pandemic to help people make this transition? Help people to get access to these technologies, help people learn how to use these technologies. And this is where I think from a research agenda, we have a lot to learn, and we can hopefully document how some of these organizations have been helping people onboard into the digital economy.
Thank you. And so, Andrea, we know that the benefits of financial inclusion, as Maya mentioned, many new users of digital financial services for the first time. But these benefits can only be reached if people are comfortable and confident using the digital financial products themselves. Can you please tell us a little bit about what the EU Commission is doing to both promote financial inclusion and provide financial education to the users of financial services? Are you still on mute, Andrea?
Hi, how are you? Do you hear me?
Yes.
The question is for me, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, for Andrea.
Okay.
Who's on mute. I'm sorry, Andrea,
Okay.
you're still on mute. Now you're okay. We can't hear you. No. Jay, I'm sorry, you're still on mute.
Hello?
Yes, great, thank you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, you can. Oh, excellent. Oh, excellent. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me. It's also my first time. So and thanks for your friendly introduction. I'm indeed the deputy head of unit of the retail unit in the European Commission in the Directorate General for financial services. So, and of course, the basic aim of our work is to ensure that all consumers can benefit from a well-functioning financial system, and that this system works for the people, that they can easily pay, make money transfers, make savings, or take out a loan, or invest in the capital markets. But obviously, there are a number of components which are crucial. You need some consumer protection, but you also need financial literacy. And you need to ensure, obviously, financial inclusion as well. Now, COVID has had an important impact on the work, and in very different ways. First of all, you had the part where, very much in the beginning of in March, where the question was, how can we actually facilitate contactless payments so that I don't have to use cash? So there we try to work the EBA, and we try to encourage payment service providers to raise the limit for contactless payments. Then obviously we have to look at all the impact, the economic impact that COVID has on people. And so a lot of member states, or in practical all of our member states, measures have been put in place, like in particular moratoria for payment. If somebody had taken out a loan for the house and now they have been made redundant, that there was a moratorium. And we've tried to facilitate this and got together the industry and stakeholders and to have some best practices there. But then also, and we will need to look how this goes on, because we're not at the end yet, and we risk that this is going to lead to a lot of over-indebtedness. So here we will need to see whether we need to change some legislation to also to see whether the Consumer Credit Directive, the Mortgage Credit Directive need to be amended to take this into consideration to help with more debt advice, these kind of things. And then, as has also already been mentioned, COVID has of course reinforced the trend to digitalization. And digitalization, of course, has a lot of positive aspects, and can, in particular in the EU, and facilitate cross access to services that otherwise you wouldn't have, because you get easily access to cross-border services. But of course, there is the other side. You need to ensure that this is all secure. You need to also make sure that people actually understand it, because financial products are already very complex, but then this adds an additional layer of complexity. You also need to make sure they're also digitally literate. Now, and obviously, an additional problem also for financial inclusion is the question on ensuring cash availability. Some people still need cash. They don't know how to use the cards, and we need to also make sure that the merchant accept that. So now you have asked me, sorry, to outline all the problems we had seen, but you had asked me what do we do? Well, I've already indicated a few things, and we also try to step up our work on financial literacy. There is already quite some work going on in different departments of the Commission. An important part that we have just started is we are going to develop a well, maybe stop one thing before. As you might probably know, financial literacy, as important as it is, this is in principle, the exclusive competence of the member states. So the Commission, the EU level, we can only act to support and to supplement the work. But nevertheless, so we are limited in what we can do, but we can still do a few things. An important aspect that we are currently working on is to look at establishing an EU financial competence framework. And so we're first going to assess the feasibility, and the idea is to outline key areas of competence pertaining to financial literacy, and to discuss the knowledge, skills, also digital skills that are required. And this could then help for the member states to be included in maybe school curricula, could be used for awareness raising campaigns. So this is the kind of supplementary work we are doing. And we're also even thinking about proposing legislation to require member states to promote learning measures. Those I could give you further indication of what we're also doing financial inclusion, but maybe I don't want to dominate the debate here, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So Pablo, let's dig into one of the use cases which both Mayada and Andrea referred to, which is the increased use of digital payments by governments. So the World Bank's documented more than 195 countries that have planned, introduced, or adapted more than 1,000 safety net payments and other social protection measures for the most vulnerable populations during COVID. And for example, women who might be less educated and have lower numeracy and literacy skills, which can make it harder for them to navigate cash withdrawals, understanding how to use the ATM, the importance of keeping their PIN number private, recourses in the case of mechanical or human error. And so what strategies do you suggest that governments develop both to promote the digital skills and financial capability, especially for those who might be using digital payments for the first time?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Leora. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank EduFin. You know, and Sajib, we are really proud to be part of this initiative, and of course, we are really happy to continue in the future to help with our Ibero-American mission. No, you know, I work in Sajib for 20 years, and from the beginning, I heard about the necessity, okay, to include the financial education in all the educational levels, okay? And I see some projects, I agree with this, but I think is maybe the most important moment, okay, in the last 30 years to include these programs on the education, okay, in first sight, okay? I think never, this situation is so critical, and I think it's really the moment that the governments have to include this kind of education in all the education process. Also, I think the governments have to include some kind of financial education to the people who are asking for loans or for different financial products, okay? I understand many people, especially in development countries, who are asking for help, okay, for have credits, for trying to have some economic help for developing a micro business or something like this, don't have in many cases this critical financial education, okay? And I think governments have to lead at this moment on this process, have to give the elements, have to give, for example, the access to technology. That will be not possible without the access to technology, and to help all the people, because finally, if this population or these companies, SMS, have better access to technology and have better access to the financial education, they will take more intelligent decisions, okay? I think we all agree that in all the decisions you take, or the most 90% of the decisions you take in your life, there is always a financial part of the decision, okay? And we need to help these people to understand better about the different products they receive from the financial industry, okay? And I think with these skills, with these new skills, they will take absolutely better decision. And governments, we need the governments to do that, okay? Private sector can do alone. And as I said, I think it's the most important moment for governments to help the people to understand better financial capabilities.
Thank you. So it's interesting. So you mentioned the importance of providing this information to people. But there's growing literature suggesting that the onus for responsible financial products, using financial products, shouldn't rest exclusively on the consumers. For example, mystery shopper studies in Latin America and Africa, which send people into banks and MFIs posing as customers, find that many customers, especially women, are often not offered the most appropriate product or told their complete credit terms. This research suggests that in addition to financial education, it's also important to strengthen and enforce consumer protection. So Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about what the European Commission is doing in respect to consumer protection initiatives?
Sure. Can you still hear me?
Yes, you're on.
That is very good. Thank you. So yes, obviously financial literacy is crucial, financial inclusion is crucial, but a main focus is of course always that we have in place the adequate consumer protection rules. And I believe that there is already quite some rules. We have safeguards. We have specific legislation for consumer credit. We have specific legislation for mortgage credit, which forces the providers to assess the credit worthiness and will only provide the credit, in case this is insured. We have the right for a basic bank account and rules to facilitate switching, and we have rules for the security of payments and transparency through information documents on investment products, insurance, and there is in the EU there is a good base for legislation. But having said that, of course we can never rest there, and we need to always make sure that the rules that we have set up, that they still achieve the objective, that they're up to date. And actually, a good number of the legislative acts they're coming up for a review. So currently, the colleagues are looking at the Consumer Credit Directive. Do we need to amend some rules to take into account the experience we've had with COVID? Do we need to strengthen the rules for the mortgage credit, the Payment Account Directive? So there is a lot going on to assess whether we need to change it for in light of the COVID experience, but also in view of digitalization, in view of sustainability. And maybe one aspect that I want to highlight, indeed, there is, as you mentioned, there is some evidence that customers do not always get the products offered that would be best suited to them. We are going to look at the rules on retail investment. Now, you might think rules on retail investment, people that have the money to invest, this is already, they are already financially literate and they understand, and they are well off anyway. But it is important to encourage the participation in the capital markets, just for ensuring that there is enough money for the retirement savings. So we are looking at this, and we have just started a study which is going to carry out things like mystery shopping and everything to get a very good evidence base to see whether the rules we have in place are working properly. And we are looking at questions of disclosures. We are also looking at questions of inducement. There are a number of issues we are going to look at, and this is supposed to feed into a retail investment strategy, which places the consumer at the heart. That is planned for the first half of 2020. That's an important aspect we're looking at.
Oh, thank you. Oh, interesting. Especially because research has shown that financial education is often most effective when delivered, at that teachable moment, like when people are making their pension and retirement planning decisions. Also, for example, when people are applying for credit or opening an account for the first time. So using text messaging and other technologies to deliver information can also help financial institutions comply with transparency and other requirements. So Pablo, starting your response, what do you see as the role of technology to deliver financial education and improve financial capability?
Yes, I think the question is how to do that without the technology. No, I think on this scenario, no, it's the technology today is the key factor. I think of course you can develop the best programs on financial education in the world, but if the people you want to reach don't have access to the technology, as I said before, is very difficult. No, and at this moment. You can ask why. You know, the COVID is very worst for everybody. No, you can be rich or poor. The virus is very worst for everybody. But you know, in the road or in the way for the countries to growth again, to exit the situation, the financial education will be very important. Okay, because we need to give the same opportunities to everybody to understand about financing and give them the instruments, okay, to help them on that expectative to growth again. Okay, so and in this process, if we can't have the access to technology, that will be very hard for many people in many economies, especially in Latin America. So as I told you, for me at this moment, technology is absolutely the key question. No, it's very difficult to reach the people you want to reach without that technology. Okay, and I think that will be very, very important to explain the different programs of financial education, of course.
And so Pablo, just to follow up, what do you see as the most effective ways to deliver financial education to people living in Latin America, especially in the rural areas, which might be, off the grid in terms of access to technology?
Yeah, it's not easy. Of course, this is the question, and of course, this is what we talk about sometimes in Sajid, because we work too with some programs of innovation, and we talk many times with the delivers of technology. And of course, this is one of the big problems in the region. There are many places in the region who don't have this access. I think organizations, we are not doing cooperations on actively cooperation on the countries, but I think as you asked me in the last questions, maybe governments have to lead on this, no? Because they have the possibility, of course, to help the institutions like BBVA, for example, to expand their programs to the population when these people don't have access to the technology, no? And I think it has to be a cooperation between private and public sector. As I said, for private sector, it's not possible to do it alone. So themselves, no. So I need, and we always talk about in our organizations, no, about the role of the public-private cooperation, and this is for example, a very important case to do it together, no. Thank you.
Mayada, we've mentioned a few times the special role that technology could play, especially in helping women more responsibly and safely use financial products. Could you talk a little bit about both the use of technology to deliver financial services to women, but also any specific consumer protection, both concerns and remedies that you've suggested?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to just start by saying the best way that technology can be used is to meet people where they are. So I think sometimes what happens when we think of these innovations, sometimes we look for the best rather than what's appropriate. So for the consumer and for where they are today. So technology can be used in many ways. It can be used to reinforce what people already know. It can also be used to actually substitute other ways of delivering financial education. CFI 5 years ago did this landscaping study on innovations in financial education around the world, and we're actually updating it right now. So I'm going to share with you a few of the things that we've been seeing in terms of how the delivery of financial education can be adapted to where people are. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the things we've uncovered. So one of the ways, for women who may not have smartphones, or who may not have expensive technology. They may have simple feature phones. We're seeing financial education delivered through interactive voice response, which has actually been quite effective. So Opportunity International, for example, has been piloting with partners in Ghana and Uganda, and they have found that although females don't they still underperform men, let's just say, IVR is actually very effective in reaching them, and it's helping them obtain information that they would not otherwise obtain. We're seeing another innovation also using IVR, something called Hey Sister, Show Me the Mobile Money. It's an IVR-based financial literacy campaign that builds women's capacity to use mobile money. And this program is being offered in 10 different countries around the world and in different local languages. So you have, from the most basic type to much more advanced types of financial education. For example, there's another program that's an app. It's called DreamSave, and it's a digital record-keeping app that's been piloted in Tanzania and among savings groups. And it's tailored for both those who are, let's call them born digital, they're very comfortable with technology, and those who are savings groups who used to use paper record keeping and are now shifting to digital. And this app helps people shift and make the move, and it's proven quite successful. Anyway, we're seeing lots of interesting innovation that is meeting customers where they are, and I think that this is one of the key ways we should be thinking about this. In terms of the consumer protection piece, we see consumer protection. So we see financial education as integral to consumer protection. So the two go hand in hand. People must be aware of what they're using. They need to have the knowledge to know and understand the financial services they're using. So we see embedding consumer protection in the product design is really the key to ensuring that people understand when they're signing up for a product, when they're signing up to use something. They understand what their rights are, they understand what their obligations are. Another area that we think is really important, where technology by the supervisor can play an important role, is in using, for example, a chatbot or some other way to capture consumer complaints so that the supervisor is aware of what's happening in the market. And we're seeing this in some emerging markets taking off. So for example, the Central Bank of the Philippines just under COVID launched a chatbot where consumers can, if they've experienced any kind of complaint, can submit a message to the supervisor directly, and the supervisor can then understand exactly what's happening in the market in terms of which agent might be mis-selling something or charging too much, or which provider is not doing the right thing with the consumers, and then also which kind of consumers. For example, if it's more women are subjected to this kind of treatment versus men. And so these are the kinds of things that we're seeing, and our report will come out also early next year, so we'll make that available to everyone.
Thank you. So now may be a good time to pause and ask if there have been any questions asked from participants.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for this very interesting discussion. We have received, indeed, some questions. I'm gonna address the first one. There are a couple to Mayada regarding the reflections that you have had regarding technology. Tomás Arrieta, for example, was explaining that we should be using easier ways to transaction, especially regarding security issues. But what really caught my attention from his question is he's suggesting using biometric validation, voice recognition that you mentioned. And also regarding this question, Maria Jose Roa was asking us, to go a little bit further in detail regarding this voice recognition service that you were mentioning. So I don't know if you can dwell a little bit more in the voice recognition systems, in the other types, because when we think about technology, we think about smartphones and we think about connectivity, but you mentioned a lot of things like chat box, voice recognition issues that could be also interesting to explore. Can you dwell a bit more in that?
Sure. So, I mean, the technology is not new, and it's something that actually we use for even research, not just for financial education, but CFI, we've used it to conduct research with consumers around the world. So essentially it is, you're interacting with a consumer through short messages, and they can react to those messages. And so the information is kind of bite-sized, and then they can respond. They can respond in by phone, by text, and so on. And so it's a great way to communicate. So you're having this two-way communication with a consumer. So you can assess whether they understand something, give them different information if they don't, and so on. So it's a very simple. I mean, most low-income consumers is maybe not if they're illiterate, but a lot of people are able to text and or answer a phone or respond to a call, and so I think it is adapted to very simple environments. I'm not sure I caught the biometric validation issue. I think that this is more about how do we onboard people into the system.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have some biometric system for payments, but and I think the potential of biometric is very high. And actually, yeah, recognition I think is very interesting for biometrics. I mean, for recognition at the time that security is also an issue. I don't know, Leora, if you want me to continue with some questions that we have received from the. Okay, perfect. Sure. Perfect. I have another one for that I think we can address maybe to Andrea. I have a couple of questions. The first one is about trust. Another attendee has also mentioned that I love the example, like it's very important that you have trust in your bank and in the people that represents the bank. And he said it's like taking the car to be repaired, no? So if you trust, you continue going with the car, I guess is what he means. And he says that it's not the same to process a fund transfer or to request a mortgage. And it's true that you probably need different levels of trust, but I don't know if, Andrea, if you can tell us a little bit about if you consider that trust has been increased or decreased after trust in banking institutions, I mean, after the COVID. And maybe you want to also, you were mentioning a little bit before about the importance of financial education in the policy agenda of the European Union. So I don't know if you are considering also questions about the trust of the consumer in the financial institutions. So a little bit a question about trust, how you see trust after the COVID, and how you see trust maybe reflected in the policy agenda of the European Union regarding financial education.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Trust, admittedly, I don't know. I don't have any figures whether trust in financial institutions has increased in COVID. I mean, we've said a lot that that banks used to be the problem in the financial crisis, and now in this crisis are rather part of the problem. And indeed, banks have played a positive role. They have worked with the consumers and with the consumer organizations to provide moratoria to borrowers, and so they have tried to help. Whether this has now led to an increased trust, I don't have any figures for this. I do know that in recent years, indeed, the trust as regards mortgages has increased. And trust plays an important role in financial services, no doubt. And it plays also, it is an important part of our thoughts. When I was talking before on the retail investment strategy that we are going to be looking at, an important part will be to ensure that people can trust the financial institutions, that they can trust the advice they receive. If they don't trust, they're not going to come and invest. So that's going to be an important part. But trust is one thing. An important thing is also to ensure that there are possibilities to change. So if you're not happy with your institution, and we understand that there is quite some reluctance sometimes to actually do change when you're not happy, or to just, people think it's just too difficult and they can't do it. And we are trying to provide tools to facilitate change as well, to create competition and to ensure that there is going to be a good service to the consumers.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very interesting point, and I think it's a very important point. I think everywhere, but especially in some countries in Latin America, for example, we have heard that, for example, in Peru, where we have a subsidiary, the fear of asking, the fear of changing your bank is also a key element, and I think it's very important what you just said, no? That you can always change, and I think that's also part of your financial education. I think it's part of financial education to understand that you are not tied to a specific provider, that you can find somewhere where you feel more comfortable too.
May I add something to that point?
Yeah, sure, Leora, please. And I'm sure Jose Manuel, maybe, I don't know if I'm sure, but maybe Jose Manuel also wants to add something about, because he's very into the trust issue. So Leora, please go ahead.
No, I fully agree that having people trust their financial service providers is key to usage. And we see that, for example, both in the Global Findex data and Gallup World Poll ask questions on, do you trust financial institutions? And what's interesting is that the lowest rates in the world are both in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, where, repeated banking crises, and bank appropriations occurred, although quite a long time ago, the memory and the impact is still strong, but also in Latin America. So of those who don't have a bank account, the reason I'm unbanked is because I don't trust banks is twice as high in Latin America relative to the global average. And I would potentially also draw that to the high cost of banking services in Latin America. The banking costs are really high. They might be unexpected, that both the opening fees, but also the maintenance fees. You see money disappearing from your account. And so this greater transparency and disclosure, both by financial institutions themselves, as well as stronger and enforced consumer protection provisions, can really help build trust in people to use more financial services.
Thank you, Leora. I don't know if someone else wants to add something about the topic. If not.
Yeah, I just want to just jump in and add to what Leora was saying, because one of the concerns we've had with all of the new digital accounts that have been opened around the world as a result of the government transfers is precisely this issue around, do people understand the costs of maintaining that account down the line? Do people understand that beyond the initial transfer, that they might have to maintain the fees associated with that account? Do people understand whether they can actually close the account and how to close the account? So we think that this is a critical time where the way the kind of information we actually give consumers on how they can use these transactions accounts that have been opened will actually determine how they engage with the financial system down the line. If we mess up as you know, collectively, I'm saying we, the collective, if governments, if financial service providers who are partners in the delivery of these accounts, if we don't do the right thing by consumers, especially like I mentioned, the 1.1 billion who are recent recipients of government transfers, you know, we can go the wrong direction. So there's a critical moment here where we have to make sure that people have the right awareness and can make the right decisions with those accounts.
Let me ask you one more question about this. Maybe, to any of you, do you think this question is gonna worsen with youth? That youth is less inclined to trust bank, to understand the operation, how it works. What do you think about that?
I can start. So
Thanks.
not based on any research. So this is based on hypothesis, let's just say, and then it would be great to validate it. I would guess that the youth are comfortable with, you know, digital. Like when you look at the, you know, like the United States, for example, who starts using Venmo, who's using all of these new fintechs? It's the youth, and then older people come later. So my guess is it's going to be the same in a lot of the developing world, where the young people who are very, very comfortable on social platforms, who are very, very comfortable to try new apps, they're probably going to be the first people and to test these technologies. And I would actually argue that maybe one way to reach older people is through youth, is through that channel. And just in general, how do we get access? How do we reach people who are not likely to adopt these things? It is through the champions or individuals in a community that might actually be the nodes of influence, and that could be a way to think about delivering solutions and influencing take-up.
Thank you.
I agree with Mayada that youth's comfort with technology creates a lot of opportunities. You know, for example, the success of text messaging, you know, at the teachable moment. So, for example, when someone's applying for a loan, or, you know, in the case of developing countries, of applying for digital credit, which can come with many risks, you know, at that point, to send the text messaging, the WhatsApp messaging to reach the consumer better.
Great. Thanks, Leora. I'm going to jump now to digitalization technology. I think has been a very hot topic in the debate, and we were talking about different digital capabilities and knowledge, no? So important, and that we have witnessed in the time of COVID, how people with best technology capabilities, digital capabilities and knowledge were able to go better, not to succeed a little bit more. So we have a question here, a comment from Rodolfo Quiroz. He actually mentions how in Mexico there is a mass customization of digital strategies to, you know, to make the population more digital. And he is asking whether this approach is in other countries, how other countries are going about digitalizing their population. I don't know if Pablo or any of you have some answer for this.
Okay. Listen, as you know, in CEGIP, we are especially focused on this from the last 2-3 years, okay, especially in digital transformation and open innovation. And I don't know maybe exactly what is the situation in each country, to give some examples. But what I can say is not only the private sector are on this process, okay? Of course, the private sector are more and more involved in the open innovation process, trying to work together and try to share innovation with SMS and entrepreneurship. But governments are really interested to develop national policies of open innovation and national programs to help the large and small companies to connect on the innovation programs. And they ask officially to Sajid, for example, to help them to understand better the ecosystem to develop this kind of policies. No, so at this moment in the region there is a very, very large and very extensive movement, and I'm sure that will be increasing on the near future.
Thank you. I don't know if any other comments on that question. Otherwise, I go to. Oh, go ahead.
I can say a few words. I can maybe share what not to do. So there are cases where governments have, forced people to digitize, and the case that everybody might remember is India's demonetization effort. And what that does is that, yes, it might force people to move to digital channels quickly, that the long-term usage may not be there. So there's, in that process, I think there was a lot of research that showed that the poorest people, those who were most vulnerable, were the ones that suffered. And so maybe the lesson is governments. The role here is to create the environment, put in place the regulations, the consumer protection, and so on, to safeguard that gradual transition to a digital economy, as opposed to inflicting a very painful and short and quick way to get people to leave cash and move to digital payments.
Thank you. I love.
Maybe
Go ahead.
sorry,
brief.
I just want to briefly add. No, I fully agree with what just has been said, and the EU. We are also working very intensively on digitalization, with a digital finance strategy, digital education strategy, and the payment strategy. It's all about digitalization. But one aspect has to be clear, I think. And we've also clearly set this out. We have to also preserve cash. Not everybody is digital yet, and we need to make sure that cash remains available and that cash remains accepted also in shops. And I think this is also a lesson that became clear again from COVID.
I think it's a very important point, and I also love that you have jumped into the aspects that policymakers have to address, because we have another question that may be a little bit wide, and I don't know if we have time to answer this, but Danielle Hopkins is asking us for specific recommendations to policymakers and regulators interested in designing and implementing a national financial education program. And I know it's a wide question. I know that there are many different cases. I don't know if you have some maybe general recommendation, as you just mentioned. I think you have just mentioned two very specific things that are very important. And I don't know if you have, for example, as you just said, Andrea, not assuming that everyone is digital and everyone is able to go digital. But I don't know if you have any other suggestions. Andrea, you are now in the midst of working about in this within the European Commission. I don't know if you have some general recommendations, maybe.
General recommendations. Well,
wow, I'm asking you very difficult questions today. I know. Well, she says maybe
general recommendation on financial literacy. Well, I mean, we at the moment we're just starting to work, and I see in the chat a question on the competence framework that I had mentioned before. So our colleagues are we've just announced it. You might, if you want to take a look at it, it's in the Capital Markets Union Action Plan that was recently adopted. We say that we are going to work on a competence framework. Now, a competence framework, a financial education competence framework, is supposed to also look at, of course, digital literacy and sustainable aspects as well, because sustainability plays now also an important part for the finances. So what we are going to look at is key component. Well, we are first of all going to base ourselves on work that already exists, and because there is already a lot of work out there from the OECD in particular. And then we're going to look at what are going to be the key competences that are going to be needed, and this is what they're going to look at. Well, first we're doing a feasibility assessment and look what's already out there, and then if this is positive, then we're going to work on this financial competence framework. And the idea of this framework is that this can then be used by member states or by private parties when they want to set up, I don't know, school curricula, or when they want to do campaigns or all sorts of things. But this is just supposed to give a kind of a standard of basic skills you need to have in financial literacy.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I know it was not a very easy question. Someone actually was asking about to elaborate a little bit more about the competence framework of the European Commission. I think you just mentioned that too. So for our attendee asking about the specific recommendations, I will go with. We work in several groups, and for example, the OECD and INFE have a lot of recommendations for countries willing to create a national strategy. So maybe you can also get more information about that. And what we say always from the center is that financial education is an issue that is responsibility of the whole society, and not only for regulators, and not only for governments, not only for financial institutions, for schools, but it's really a matter that we all should be involved. So I think we have some other questions here. Let me check. But before I go to that, maybe I'm going to put another question for the whole table. We are almost done with the time. So I think I'm going to make this the last questions, because I would like to maybe get the vision of all speakers about how the priorities of financial education have changed after COVID. I think it's a very important question, because I'm sure that many of our attendees are wondering, what do I have to go now? Do I have to go with creating digital financial education? Do I have to continue financial education in schools? Do I have to abandon financial education in the schools and going through other type of channels to provide financial education for kids or for young people? What do you think about this? I would like to hear everyone, including Leora, answering this question about the new priorities of financial education. What do you think?
I can start. So I would, can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
So I would say that we can't think about financial education as separate from digital literacy. I think we have to get people connected, and we have to help them understand how to use technology. And that has to actually be part of the curriculum, let's just say, for helping people be financially educated. So I think that's what COVID has shown us. This is not going to be the last crisis. There's going to be many, many more, and we're going to have to rely on technology more and more. The whole, the world is moving towards a digital economy, a very integrated digital economy. So we have to think about that in a serious way as part of the curriculum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayada. Any other comments?
Well, I would, if I may, I would absolutely agree. I mean, financial education remains very important, but COVID has highlighted certainly the problem of digitalization, the importance of that, even though it was very evident from the before, but has become even more evident. But I would also say that, I mean, we will have to look at debt advice and financial advice for indebted people as well. I mean, we risk that, I mean, we don't know about the second wave now and how far, what the impact is going to be, the economic impact, but there is a risk that the number of indebted people might rise. So this is an aspect, I think, where we might also need to look at whether we need to do something to improve debt advice.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea.
Yes.
Go ahead.
To follow up on if I may add, to follow up on Andrea's point, the millions of adults who are facing unemployment and financial distress, it's important that consumers understand their options and have, in the face of potential defaults, and have this knowledge to avoid predatory lenders as well. And the importance of having educated consumers who are more confident and trusting users of financial services.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pablo, go ahead.
Yes. But on my opinion, I think on the priorities, of course, on the top, we have again the technology. Okay, the COVID changed the scenario, no? And I don't know if the scenario will change in short time, but we have to see that a big part of the world, and I include kids, young, seniors, entrepreneurs, now have new skills for use this technology, and of course we need to use it to expand as maximum the financial education, and with technology we will need skills, and as I said before, the private-public cooperation. No? I think this is the three instruments we need for financial education, and on my opinion, financial education at this moment is necessary for everybody in the different stage of life, and for SMEs, entrepreneurs, etc.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you. Thank you, Mayada, Andrea, and Pablo for this interesting debate and your insights. And also thank you, Leora, for your very outstanding coordination, not only the moderation today of the panel, but the coordination of the panel. Thank you all. I'm going to try to make Antonis Vallabriga work and draw the conclusions achieved. Regarding how COVID has affected all of us, I think you all agree that all have been affected, all of us have been affected, but the most vulnerable have been more hardly hit. And many people who were struggling before the pandemic are now bearing the brunt of pain. The lack of financial education, I think there is no doubt of that, contributes to worsen these social issues around the world, including poverty, inequality, lack of job opportunities, access to financial services and products, and as just Pablo mentioned, also the situation of entrepreneurs and SMEs. And I think also we all agree that this is particularly important in a time when these services and products come in a digital format. Digital financial education is key to make this access to these kind of products and services equitable. And I think the debate has mainly centered in the role of technology. Access to technology is key for the use of digital and financial services. You all have mentioned that technology is key. Pablo said, for example, that technology is the question. Also, Mayada, and I love this reflection, is that technology helps us to meet people where they are, but also that Andrea said that not everyone is digital yet, and we also have to take that into account. But I think we all agree, as Mayada also said, that we must rely in technology because it is not going to be the last pandemic. The digitalization of finance has the potential to improve the levels of financial inclusion. Digitalization can help to access a wide variety of products and also to expand the reach of financial inclusion, but digitalization brings challenges, such as the lack of financial experience, the levels of numeracy and literacy might collide with the fact that we need to use these products and services such as digital payments. So digital financial education is key in this environment. Besides, it is necessary to develop products and services and infrastructures to promote financial inclusion to the most vulnerable groups. For example, women or older people have been mentioned. We need also financial education to cope with this. And you also have mentioned the fact of financial fragility as a source of financial instability, and also have mentioned the need of policies to increase this financial resilience in structural ways. Andrea mentioned that there is a need of change in legislation to reinforce the need of financial education. And also you have mentioned your framework that you are preparing legislation to promote measures in the European Union. Consumer protection has been also discussed, and also the evidence that the more financially literate are better able to handle financial shocks like the one we just have experienced. So to conclude, I think there is an opportunity to reshape financial literacy as the foundation that will allow us, and in particular those who have suffered the most, to make decisions to support a healthy and financially secure future. And as Leora mentioned before, financial education, and this is something that I have heard so many times in the past, financial education should be provided at a teachable moment. And just to close this session, I think that with no doubt, COVID-19 has provided us with such an amount of teachable moments, and I think we should take advantage of this. So thank you all for your attendance to the event. We have had some 110 attendees throughout the events. Thank you, Jose Manuel. Thank you, Leora. And thank you all the speakers for your insightful contributions. We look forward to seeing you all at the EduFin Summit 2021. I hope that we can celebrate it in a present way, but if no, we will continue with this format that is also useful in somehow. And I just wish you all the best. And
Can I just
go ahead.
Sorry, just sorry to interrupt and to come in again. I just want to have one clarification. I'm not sure. I might not have been fully clear. I just didn't want to get the wrong press message out that we would start legislation on financial education. I just wanted to say that we are assessing whether we have a specific rule in Article 6 of the Mortgage Credit Directive, whether this is worth spreading, just to be clear that this was not misunderstood. Sorry if I had been unclear before.
Thank you so much for this very important clarification. I thank you very much, Andrea, because sometimes you are taking notes and checking the questions, and obviously didn't want to get the wrong impression. So I really thank you for the clarification, and I think it's all clear for everyone that there is no legislation being made yet. You are exploring it. So thank you, Andrea, and thank you, everyone. And
if I may, Lydia.
Go ahead, Jose Manuel.
Andrea, you have to be reassured that this is Chatham House. There are no journalists here. Your clarification is well taken because you said what you said, and it was clear to everyone.
Thank you very much.
And now, Lydia, I think that we are all suspended to your survey. So we are waiting for it. Thank you, Leora, by the way. You did a marvelous job, and all the speakers, I have to say. But on the survey, I think it is a very important step towards this position paper. So, Lydia, when are you sending it?
Yes, I think well, right now you have access to it in the Twitter account, also in the chat box that we have for attendees. Maybe, Jose Manuel, you don't see it because you are in the link of panelists, but attendees have access to the survey in the chat box, also in the Twitter account, and we will be sending it tomorrow. So all people registered to the event will receive it. And we really hope that everyone answer it, because as I said at the very beginning, we want to hear from you. We want to have as much answers as possible. And I think it's also available in the website, in the homepage. We have like a scroll, and there are a couple of announcements, and among them is the survey. So by accessing BBVA edufin.com, you can also access the survey and fill it out.
Very good. So again, thank you to everyone. It was a very inspiring discussion, and it will help us also to reply to the survey more pointedly. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh.